2023 will be a defining year for Indian diplomacy, and part of that effort will be India taking on China. As of today, China is India's biggest foreign policy challenge. Same with the United States. China is enemy number one. The US is caught in a cold war with China. India is locked in a border standoff with China. So it makes sense for them to come together. India and the US have joined hands. They're preparing to counter China on three fronts: infrastructure, defense, and diplomacy. Let's tell you how. Infrastructure first. There's a lot happening on this front. India is ramping up its border infra. An all-weather highway, a tunnel that will run through the mountains. This will be in the border state of Arunachal Pradesh. It will improve connectivity to Ladakh. India will be able to move troops and hardware faster. This highway will be the shortest route to the border. It will be built at a cost of $206 million and will be completed by December 2025. And that's not all. India is bolstering its border defenses. More soldiers will be sent to the front. Almost 50,000 soldiers are already deployed. Another 9,000 troops will be added. What about China? How many troops does Beijing have? We do not have the exact number, but it's believed that the PLA maintains a similar level of presence at the border with India. The latest border standoff with China began 3 years back. There have been at least 17 rounds of dialogue since. But China refuses to de-escalate, so India is left with no choice but to match Chinese deployments. The US too wants to help India. It is willing to share not just advanced military hardware, but also the know-how to make these weapons. Reports say India and the US are jointly developing UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. In other words, drones. A prototype is being developed. Its first trials are expected to take place later this year. How does a joint venture help? It's about the ownership of intellectual property, or IP. India and the US will share the rights, and this collaboration is not just limited to one project. A few more initiatives are in the pipeline, and this includes counter-drone systems. This is used to detect or intercept drones while they're still in the sky, and an intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance platform. How would China assess this development? We don't have a comment from Beijing yet, but safe to say they won't be thrilled. China is already punishing American defense manufacturers. Yesterday, it slapped sanctions on 2 US companies, Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. What for? For arms sales to Taiwan. Beijing is retaliating after the spy balloon scandal, and America's moved to shoot it down. Earlier this week, China vowed to take countermeasures. Yesterday, it did.
The Chinese unmanned civilian airship that strayed into US airspace was completely a force majeure accident. But what was tested was the US side's sincerity and ability to properly manage the crisis and stabilize China-US relations. The US side cannot simultaneously seek communication and dialogue while at the same time spreading conflicting lies and escalating the crisis.
The US has called these sanctions symbolic and unnecessary, which brings me to the diplomatic response. There are 2 developments on this front. Number one, a top American official is visiting Taiwan. His name is Michael Chase. He is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Defense for China. Why is this significant? Because visits by US defense officials to Taiwan are rare. In the last 40 years, 40 years, only one of them has been to Taiwan. So this will be the second visit. Back in Washington, D.C., American lawmakers are pushing for stronger ties with India. And this is the second major development. A resolution has been introduced in the US Senate. It says the state of Arunachal Pradesh is quote-unquote an integral part of India. It supports India's sovereignty and territorial integrity and condemns China, and I'm quoting again, condemns China for its use of military force. Reports say the resolution has bipartisan support in the US, and this could just be the beginning. The momentum is clearly against China, and India-US partnership has immense potential to contain the dragon. Meanwhile, in China, a new scandal has broken out. A billionaire banker has gone missing. His name is Bao Fan. Who is Bao Fan? One of China's most influential deal makers, a billionaire investment banker, and a name in Chinese tech scene. Bao Fan has executed some of the biggest mergers, like that of ride-hailing apps Didi and Kuedi, and food delivery platforms Meituan and Dianping. Bao Fan created a company called China Renaissance. For the last 2 days, he hasn't shown up at his office, and his employees are unable to reach him. No one knows where he is or whether he's safe or not. There is reason to be worried. You see, Bao's company, China Renaissance, was under scrutiny. Its former president, Kong Ling, was being probed. The investigation started in the month of September, and Bao was said to be cooperating. What was this probe about? We don't have the specifics. Now, suddenly, Bao has disappeared, and his company has sent a notice to the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. It is a message to shareholders. I have that message with me. This is what it says. The company has been unable to contact Mr. Bao Fan. The board is not aware of any information that indicates that Mr. Bao's unavailability is or might be related to the business and or operations of the group, which is continuing normally. Just imagine the horror. This is a company telling a stock exchange that it has no idea where its CEO is. Their stock took a nosedive. This morning, shares dropped by 50%. The shareholders are worried, and with good reason. They fear that Xi Jinping's crackdown on billionaires has resumed. In recent years, at least 6 billionaires in China have met the same fate. Authorities have investigated them. They've faced a range of charges from corruption to tax evasion to misconduct. Big names have been targeted like this. Jack Ma is the most prominent one. In 2020, he criticized Chinese regulators, and he lost billions. He had to call off the Ant Group IPO. It led to a loss of $37 billion. Jack Ma himself went missing for 3 months. In 2015, Guo Guangchang got the same treatment. He's known as the Warren Buffett of China. Guo had vanished for several days. As it turned out, he was assisting authorities with a probe. That is the official version. What was this investigation all about? Again, Beijing shared no details. There are other names on the list, like real estate mogul Ren Ziqiang and Tomorrow Group's executive Xiao Jianhua. More recently, Beijing has expanded this crackdown to celebrities. In 2018, actress Fan Bingbing went missing. She was out of the public eye for 3 months. When she reappeared, Chinese authorities slapped a $70 million fine on her. On what grounds? Tax evasion. Even victims of sexual assault are treated in the same way, like tennis star Peng Shuai. In 2021, she wrote a 1,600-word post on Chinese social media where she revealed how she was sexually assaulted by Zhang Gaoli. Zhang Gaoli is a powerful man in China, a former vice premier and a senior politician. Do you know what happened to the tennis player? After sharing her ordeal, she went missing for weeks. She only turned up when the world built pressure on China. The United Nations had to call for proof of her well-being. Major tennis stars like Serena Williams, Naomi Osaka, and Novak Djokovic spoke out in support of her. But when Peng returned, she denied making accusations against Zhang. What about the charges of sexual assault? She denied all of them, and China conveniently buried them. The case of Bao Fan could be the latest in the series. Will he meet the same fate as other Chinese billionaires? We don't know the full story yet, but we won't be surprised if that is the case.